People often think death is the end. For me, it was the beginning. My name is Amara, and the day my family showed their true faces was the day they believed I had nothing left to give, not even breath. This story did not rush into my life. It waited, it watched. And when the time was right, it taught me a lesson I could not have learned while alive. In my village, Amayas, people believed quiet, insignificant. The kind of woman you remember only when you need something small. They did not know what I carried in silence. They did not know what I had built without noise. And they certainly did not know what I was about to do. I did not fake my death out of hatred. I did it for clarity. Because sometimes, to understand who truly values you, you must first disappear. Before I tell you how my own funeral exposed the hearts of those who called me family, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Tell me your country and your city in the comments below. Your voice matters here. Now, listen closely. This is not just my story. It may be yours too. Before I died, I learned how to disappear without moving. In Amayis, my village, disappearance was not a mystery. It was a skill taught to women like me, slowly, patiently, until it became second nature. You learned it by speaking less than you felt, by lowering your eyes even when you were right, by accepting silence as safety. My name is Amara, and for most of my life, I existed between usefulness and forgetfulness. I was born into a family where worth was measured in land, livestock, and loud certainty. My brothers inherited fields and authority. I inherited patience. When our parents died, people gathered, cried, and divided what remained. My share was a narrow room at the back of the compound and the understanding that I should be grateful for it. You are lucky we kept you, my eldest brother once said, not in anger, but in truth. Words spoken calmly often leave the deepest marks. So I became small. I cooked, cleaned, and listened. I learned the rhythm of footsteps and the weight of silence. While others mistook my quietness for emptiness, I observed carefully. I noticed how respect shifted when money entered a room. I noticed how love grew thin when nothing could be gained. I worked outside the village whenever I could. Quiet work, uncelebrated work. I cared for the elderly, cleaned shops after closing, carried burdens that were not mine. I saved slowly. I asked few questions. I learned faster than anyone expected. What I built in silence. I registered land under another name. I kept my savings where no one thought to look. When my family asked how I survived, I smiled and said, God provides. They nodded. Faith, when convenient, silences curiosity. To them, I was poor, harmless poor. The kind of poor that never threatens inheritance. The kind that can be ignored without consequence. And I let them believe it. In Amayis, reputation speaks louder than truth. Achi gatherings, my brothers praise themselves. We take care of our sister, they said loudly. People nodded. I smiled. Silence became my costume. Inside, I stored years like stones in a basket, heavy but carried with care. Time passed, quietly, watchfully. Then, one evening, as the sun lowered itself behind the palms, I sat alone and asked, myself a question I had avoided for too long. If I disappeared, who would mourn me and who would count me? That question did not frighten me. It steadied me. I realized my family did not know me. They knew only the version of me that made them comfortable, dependent, quiet, manageable. The woman without options. And in that realization, an idea arrived, not violently, not desperately, calmly. I would let them believe I had died. Not to punish, not to revenge, but to understand. Because death has a way of removing masks that time politely ignores. I spoke to no one in my family. I prepared quietly. I arranged the story of a sudden illness, the urgency, the final breath. I entrusted the truth to only one old woman who once told me, "When people think you are finished, they stop pretending." She did not question me. She only nodded. That night, I slept without fear. The woman my family knew was already gone. And when they gathered to bury what they believed was my body, they revealed what they had been carrying all along. I did not attend my funeral as the dead do. I attended as the forgotten do, unseen, uncounted, and finally free to listen. The morning my family believed I had died, Améis woke earlier than usual. Women swept the compound with urgency. Men spoke in hushed voices that grew louder whenever authority entered the space. Grief, I noticed, had a schedule. My body was not there. Only a wrapped shape prepared by strangers who had been told not to ask questions. I watched from a distance, covered in borrowed clothing, my head bowed low enough to avoid recognition. In a village like mine, no one studies a woman who looks like she belongs nowhere. They cried for me. Or at least, they performed something that resembled it. My sisters-in-law wailed loudly, their voices rising and falling like practice songs. My brothers stood stiffly, faces heavy with the importance of loss. Neighbors whispered kind words they had never spoken to me while I lived. She was quiet. One woman said, "Yes," another replied. Too quiet. Quiet, even in death. As the body was placed at the center of the compound, people gathered closer. The prayers began, heads bowed, hands clasped. I bowed mine too, though my breath was steady. Then, slowly, something shifted. Always noise. Between prayers, the whispers crept in, careful at first, respectful in tone but sharp in intent. I heard my name spoken differently now. Not as a person, but as a question. Did she have anything? She worked in the city sometimes. Maybe she saved something. Grief thinned. Curiosity grew. I watched my eldest brother pull another aside. Their voices dropped, but not enough. Death makes people careless. She had no children, one said. And no husband, the other replied. Then, whatever she left returns to the family. I felt no anger, only clarity. The same men who barely noticed my presence while I lived were now calculating my absence. My years of silence had not made me invisible, they had made me unimportant. When the prayers ended, the body was prepared for burial. As men lifted the wrapped form, I noticed how quickly the atmosphere changed. The weight of death seemed to lighten once there was nothing left to look at. Food was served. Conversations resumed. Laughter, quiet at first, found its courage. I sat nearby, eating little, listening carefully. She was lucky we allowed her to stay, my brother said, repeating the same words he once spoke to my face. This time, no one corrected him. Death had turned his words into history. Another voice answered, if she left money, it must be somewhere. People like her always hide things. People like her. By afternoon, grief had finished its performance. What remained was impatience. They wanted closure. They wanted certainty. They wanted to know if my life had been worth anything at all. As the body was lowered into the ground, I felt a strange peace settle inside me. Not sadness. Not relief. Recognition. This was the measure of my place among them. They buried what they believed was me with care. But what they uncovered that day was not a body. It was intention. As the soil covered the grave, my family stood close, already discussing what should happen next. And I understood something then, with a calm that surprised me. My death had not silenced them. It had given them permission. Death has a way of making people brave, or greedy, or honest in the ugliest way possible. By the third day after my funeral, the house no longer felt like a place of mourning. It felt like a negotiation room. I watched everything from the shadows of my guest bedroom, the door slightly open, my heart calm in a way that surprised even me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was curious. My younger brother, Daniel, arrived first that morning. He had cried the loudest at the funeral, nearly collapsing beside my coffin. Now he walked through the house whistling softly, as if he were early for a business meeting. "Where's the lawyer?" he asked my aunt before even sitting down. That was when I knew the performance was over. My cousin Maya brought coffee and pastries, arranging them neatly on the table, acting like the responsible one. She had always said I was like a sister to her. She used to borrow money from me for emergencies that somehow always involved shopping. She wouldn't want us fighting, Maya said gently. We should divide things fairly. Fairly. The word sat heavy in the air. My mother stayed silent, watching them all with eyes that looked tired rather than sad. I tried to read her expression, but it was like looking through fog. I couldn't tell if she was grieving or calculating. Then came the list. Daniel had printed out everything he believed I owned. My savings, my house, the small investment account I had once mentioned casually at dinner, even items I had lent people years ago. I think I should manage the money, he said confidently. You know, until things settle. Maya nodded immediately. Yes, Daniel's good with numbers. I almost laughed. He had borrowed money from me more times than I could count and never paid a cent back. My aunt cleared her throat. What about her jewelry? Some of it is family heirloom. Family heirloom. The necklace I bought myself after my first promotion. The ring I saved for months to afford. Suddenly, everything that was mine had always belonged to the family. No one mentioned my kindness. No one mentioned the hospital visits, the late-night phone calls, the bills I quietly paid. Only assets, only value. And then my mother spoke. She promised me the house, she said softly. The room went silent. Daniel frowned. What? When? She said she didn't want to live alone forever. My mother continued. She said one day I could move in. That the house would be mine. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. I had offered her comfort, not ownership. Still, everyone accepted it without question, because it benefited them. If the house went to my mother, Daniel could help manage it. Maya could visit freely. Rewan, accept me. By afternoon, alliances had formed. Voices grew sharper. Old resentments surfaced. You always favored her. Daniel snapped at my mother. You always wanted more than your share. Maya shot back at him. And you, Mayan said to both of them, you didn't even visit her when she was sick. They fought over me as if I were a prize they had already won. No, one asked what I would have wanted. That night, I cried not out of heartbreak, but relief. Because now I knew. There were no doubts left, no excuses. No, maybe they didn't mean it that way. They meant every word. And this too. I wasn't done. The lawyer would arrive the next day. And that was when the real inheritance would begin. Money. But truce. The lawyer arrived at exactly 10 in the morning. I know because I was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, hands steady, heart strangely light. There was a calm inside me I had never felt before. Not peace, clarity. His name was Mr. Collins, mid-50s, gray suit. Convoys. The kind of man who had seen families fall apart over far less than what mine was about to face. They gathered in the living room as if summoned by instinct. My mother sat on the couch, hands folded. Daniel leaned back in a chair, arms crossed, already bored. Maya pretended to scroll on her phone but listened to every breath. I stayed hidden. Mr. Collins opened his briefcase and placed a thick folder on the table. As you all know, he began, I was appointed by the deceased to execute her final wishes. Deceased. The word echoed in my chest, but I didn't flinch. There are several documents, he continued, but before we discuss assets, I must read a personal letter she requested be shared with all present. Daniel sighed loudly. Is that really necessary? Mr. Collins looked at him calmly. It is mandatory. That shut him up. He unfolded the letter. My dear family, he read, if you are hearing this, then you believe I am gone. Swallowed. This letter exists not because I feared death, but because I feared being misunderstood. Ma'aya shifted uncomfortably. I spent most of my life giving, not because I was rich, but because I loved. I gave money, time, energy, and silence. Often, my silence was the most expensive thing I owned. My mother lowered her gaze. I helped when I could. I stayed quiet when I was hurt. And I smiled when I felt invisible. This letter is not meant to accuse but to reveal. Daniel scoffed softly. Mr. Collins continued. Each of you has spoken about what I promised. The truth is, I promised very little. What I gave freely but not blindly. I could almost feel their breathing change. Which is why my inheritance is not what you expect. Daniel leaned forward now. Before any assets are distributed, the lawyer said, there are conditions. That got their full attention. The house, he read, will not be transferred immediately. It will be held in trust for 6 months. What? Daniel snapped. Mr. Collins raised a hand. During those 6 months, the beneficiaries must comply with specific requests outlined by her. Maya smiled nervously. Requests like what? He looked down at the document. First, monthly visits to the local community center, where she volunteered minimum of 10 hours per month. My aunt blinked. Volunteer work? Yes, he said calmly. Second, repayment of any personal loans she documented, to be donated to a charity of her choosing. Daniel's face went pale. Repayment? And third, Mr. Collins continued, his voice steady. A written letter from each of you, explaining not why you deserve the inheritance, but how you supported her when she was alive. Silence crashed into the room. My mother finally spoke. This is unusual. Mr. Collins nodded. She was very clear. Daniel stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. She's dead. None of this matters. And that's when Mr. Collins said the words that changed everything. She anticipated that reaction. He opened another envelope. This is an addendum, he said. In case any beneficiary refuses the conditions. Maya's voice trembled. And what happens then? Mr. Collins looked around the room. In that case, their share is forfeited entirely. My heart beat once, hard, and redistributed. My aunt asked. Yes, he replied. To the person she trusted most. Daniel laughed bitterly. And who would that be? You. Mr. Collins didn't smile. No, he said. Herself. The room froze. My client arranged for the inheritance to revert to her sole control under a living trust one that remains active. Daniel frowned. That's impossible. She's dead. Mr. Collins closed the folder slowly. Is she? Every face turned pale. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Maya stood up, shaking. What do you mean? Is she? I took a deep breath behind the door. The time for watching was over. Because the final truth was about to walk into the room. And this time, I wouldn't be silent. I opened the door slowly. Every step I took toward the living room felt unreal, like walking out of a dream and into a storm. The floor creaked beneath my feet, and with each sound, their faces changed confusion, disbelief, fear. My mother was the first to see me. Her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face. This can't be, she whispered. Daniel turned next. His mouth opened, then closed again, like his brain couldn't keep up with what his eyes were seeing. Maya let out a sharp gasp and stumbled back into the couch. I stood there, alive, breathing, watching the truth settle into their bones. I'm not dead, I said calmly. But now I know exactly who I would have been buried by. No Juan Spo. Mr. Collins cleared his throat, but I raised my hand gently. It's okay. I'll take it from here. I looked at them, my family, my blood, my greatest lesson. I didn't fake my death because I wanted revenge. I continued. I did it because I needed certainty. I needed to know if I was loved. or just useful. My mother began to cry, real tears this time. She reached out a trembling hand. Why would you do something so cruel? I met her gaze. Because being used quietly for years is its own kind of cruelty. Daniel found his voice. You humiliated us. I nodded. You exposed yourselves. Maya shook her head. We thought you were gone. People do strange things when they're grieving. I took a step closer. Grief doesn't make you count money. Character does. The silence that followed was heavy, but it didn't hurt anymore. I turned to my mother. You said I promised you the house. What I promised was that you'd never be alone. Those are not the same thing. She lowered her head. To you, I said. Looking at Daniel, I gave chances. Over loans you never repaid. And yet, the first thing you asked for was control. Daniel clenched his fists. You planned this. You trapped us. No, I said gently. I tested you. You failed. Mr. Collins stepped forward. If I may, he said. The trust remains active, as instructed. I nodded. None of you will receive my assets, I said plainly. Not because I hate you, but because you showed me exactly what money would do to you. Maya burst into tears. So that's it. We get nothing. You get something far more valuable, I replied. The truth. I explained the rest calmly. The house would be sold. The money would fund scholarships for women who grew up believing love had to be earned through sacrifice. The remaining funds would support the community center where I had volunteered for years quietly, without applause. And you, Daniel asked bitterly, what do you get? I smiled for the first time that day. My life back. I turned to my mother one last time. I love you. But love doesn't mean self-erasure. I hope one day you understand that. She nodded through her tears, knowing this was goodbye not forever, but forever changed. I walked out of that house with nothing in my hands and everything in my chest. Peace, clarity, freedom. People often ask me if I regret pretending to be dead. I don't. Because some people will never show you who they are until they believe you can no longer see them. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance you can leave yourself is walking away from what never truly belonged to you.